Tonight on the Paper Review Podcast, we talk Monday Night Raw, Smackdown, post-draft. How serious is WWE going to be taking this? Tonight we discuss that on the Paper Review Podcast, featuring your host, me, Mark Flores. Drink it in, man. Peace out to Chris Jericho for being one of the most greatest heels of our era. We're going to miss him when he's gone, because he usually likes to leave and come back and leave and come back. Anyway, I'm your host, Mark Flores. Tonight, we're talking Monday Night Raw, Smackdown reaction, analysis, review. We're going to be talking about them post-draft, how they looked, what I liked from them, what I didn't like. But first and foremost, let's get the commercials out of the way. Tonight's pay-per-review wrestling podcast is brought to you by Game Swappers. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade your retro games and next-gen consoles. That's PS4 and Xbox One. You can come into contact with Game Swappers via Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers, buy, sell, and trade. Keep in mind, guys, that if you do share the Pay-Per-Review Wrestling Podcast, Retro Collecting 101 Podcast, where I give you tips and advice on how to amass a great retro collection, or the very hilarious Mark and Andre Podcast Show, the only film, entertainment, and conspiracy theory podcast on Spreaker.com, you'll be able to get 10% off towards your retro game purchases at Game Swappers, or if you're not in the interest of buying retro games, simply share the podcast. You'll be able to get 10% more towards your retro game trade-ins. Simply take a screenshot of your share on any form of social media, show the employee working at Game Swappers that day, and you'll be able to get 10% off towards your purchase. It's as simple as that. I win, you win with a discount, Game Swappers wins with more business. Anyway, guys, I want to get into it right now. Basically, what happened on Monday Night Raw and Smackdown, an overall consensus on the display and how it looked. I like the insignias, I like how Raw looks right now, and I like how Smackdown looks. Both fonts look very edgy, very hip, very new era, if you will. The new stage and a new look with a fresh commentary team for both sides will be a great take on what the new era can bring in. I really appreciate the fact that they know Corey Graves' immense talent as a commentator, and I know he takes his job very seriously because he does enjoy to commentate now. A former wrestler actually doing commentary is better for the image of WWE, because it actually promotes the business within the announce team as well, because then you look up former matches of Corey Graves, so on and so forth. Corey Graves is a very good announcer, so he's doing his best on the commentary team, and that's what I definitely appreciate with that. But we start off Monday Night Raw with some immediate news about their form of a championship, and they have an instant new title, and it's called the Universal Championship. Personally, I think that the new title name is appropriate for the new fresh direction the new era is going in. I think it deviates away from old traditional titles, so it's a very new name for a title. I think that the design of the belt would be a very good design, simply because they've been on quite this hot streak of making new designs for these titles, redoing the Intercontinental title white. The women's title is very reminiscent of the WWE World Heavyweight title, so these are definitely things to appreciate and things to see now. So that's something to get out of the way immediately. Finn Balor actually debuts on Monday Night Raw amidst all these teasers during major pay-per-views saying that he was going to show up and form the club. I remember mentioning it on several podcasts, like it was always a possibility for several podcasts going on, and now they finally debut him for the draft and for this new episode of Monday Night Raw. But Stephanie McMahon and Mick Foley immediately go into this actually having an actual fatal four-way to determine the opponent that Dean Ambrose will face for SummerSlam. So it was Rusev, Cesaro, Finn Balor, and Kevin Owens. They ended up They ended up wrestling together, and then Finn Balor comes out the victor in that. And then for the second part of the Fatal 4-Way, the other one was Sheamus, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, and Chris Jericho. The only gripe I have with the lineup like Sheamus, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, and Chris Jericho, that lineup basically tells you who's going to win the Fatal 4-Way, because Sheamus has lost continuity as far as like his whole image and his whole gimmick. And I say that because he's been out of the title picture for a long time. Sami Zayn is really not a heavyweight title contender yet. He's really not a main event guy yet. Roman Reigns, former 3-time champ already, unfortunately. And now we have Chris Jericho, who is really, his only job right now is an enhancement talent. So out of these 4 guys, you automatically know who's going to win that match. So then it came to the main event with Finn Balor and Roman Reigns, and wow, this match really impressed me. There was a lot of great high-flying spots, especially from Finn Balor, and a great job to Roman Reigns, coming off of a big layoff, but still being able to put in some work. It was very impressive to see him wrestle, especially after the Sunday night he was working last night at Battleground. Both Fatal 4-Way matches were very crisp, very entertaining to watch. The second Fatal 4-Way was surprisingly better than the first one. I thought that they actually put on a better show than that of Rusev, Cesaro, Finn Balor, and Kevin Owens. But other than that, to have Roman Reigns lose to Finn Balor and have Finn Balor face Dean Ambrose at SummerSlam actually show to me that the whole suspension wasn't actually a work at all, and that Roman Reigns actually ended up getting busted for Adderall. So that actually does definitely show me that there is a form of disciplinary action for people who actually do these things. That brings me a little bit at ease. So now Finn Balor actually has his chance to win a title against Dean Ambrose at SummerSlam. Against Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. Excuse me, I'm just fresh off of Smackdown right now, and I'm saying that. But Seth Rollins and Finn Balor are going to put on this crazy match at SummerSlam, and I'm super excited for it. So I really cannot wait for that. Another thing to point out too is that we had Neville's return. Adrian Neville ended up returning. He looks great. He had a very quick match going against Curtis Axel on Monday Night Raw. Went really well. The Red Arrow just needs a little bit more work. I mean, he's been out for a little while with the ankle injury, so it'll be good to see him come back on the mix. The next thing I wanted to talk about on Monday Night Raw was Charlotte versus Sasha Banks. You have 2 of the best WWE women wrestlers in the business today. Ranking this match, if you were able to take this whole match and actually take it to whatever other place you want to take it, I mean, you're looking at a SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, a WrestleMania type of match. This match was definitely a 4-star match to me. Definitely something to see again and again and again. There was an amazing spot from Charlotte where she actually performed a moonsault from the turnbuckle to the outside of the ring. It was done very safely, so no one botched that. But then Sasha Banks does a suicide dive botch, ends up landing on her neck. So it's very, it's very painful to see some of these botches that Sasha Banks takes a lot. So she needs to take another look at that. But the most very surprising thing of the night was that Charlotte ended up losing to Sasha Banks. Now Sasha Banks is now the new WWE Women's Champ, and it is so amazing to say that because simply Sasha Banks deserves it more than anyone. But another thing to point out is that it was done on cable television. I cannot tell you guys enough how joyous that is for some people, and for me in particular. I like seeing major titles being changed on cable television. It gives people more interest. It gives more people in the mainstream more interest to watch these, and then be more intrigued to buy the WWE Network, and then in turn be more intrigued to actually watch further down the road. Very impressive stuff. Overall, I enjoyed the new look of Monday Night Raw. I could see WWE's grand vision, and it looks fantastic. I am excited for this new pay-per-view. I'm excited for SummerSlam, and I'm also excited. Excuse me. I'm also excited for the new vision that Monday Night Raw has. I'm more to go back to my point of my last podcast, is that I'm glad that I'm able to watch Monday Night Raw and get a certain batch of superstars, but then I'm even more intrigued to watch it on Tuesday nights now. And having 2 episodes of wrestling consecutively on Monday and Tuesdays is actually something pretty awesome. I mean, it's very cool. I think so. I think so myself, anyway. But yes, overall, I think Monday Night Raw did a great job. I have nothing bad to say about it, but I really the only gripe that I have is just the logo. I mean, after you see the W on the Monday Night Raw, and you see that it looks like a backward, not a backwards M, but upside down M, you just can't unsee that. And that's just something, that's just a little gripe. It's just nitpicking at its finest. But anyway, now we'll talk about SmackDown. I recently just saw SmackDown conclude at about 10 o'clock Pacific time, which is not live in my time, but hopefully when it gets to the West Coast, it'll end up being live then. But anyway, I think SmackDown is being presented very well. I think it's a very... I think what I really like is that Monday Night Raw and SmackDown identify themselves very separately. You have red, blue, the color scheme. The color scheme works at a subconscious level, but that's neither here nor there. But it's still blue ropes, red ropes for the respective shows. I like that. I think that's a great touch. Everything's being presented very well on SmackDown Live. Both Raw and SmackDown are obviously segregated differently. Both designs have a different look and feel. But Shane McMahon, Daniel Bryan immediately put out a 6-pack challenge for someone to face Dean Ambrose at SummerSlam, because Dean Ambrose doesn't have an opponent. So they have AJ Styles, John Cena, Baron Corbin, Bray Wyatt, and Dolph Ziggler. They have those 5 guys being presented for the 6-pack challenge, but they end up doing a battle royal for the 6th spot, and that immediately started right in the beginning. And then you have all these people doing a battle royal for the 6th spot, and then out of the 6th spot, you had the two people at the very end. You had Kane, and then you had Apollo Crews, and then all you see, everyone's, the whole crowd's into it, and then you see Kane try to hold up Apollo Crews, but Apollo Crews forces a backflip out of it, and then ends up tugging down the ropes as Kane charges him. Kane falls over, and then Apollo Crews is the only one standing there, and the crowd goes nuts. You just hear a bunch of cheers, and Apollo Crews getting over like that is very impressive to see. I think Apollo Crews, with the right direction, he can be a better version of what Titus O'Neil is. I've always was very high on Apollo Crews. I think he's an athletic Adrian Neville with a little bit bigger build. I think he could do stuff in the ring that a lot of people can't. I think he's as strong as Cesaro, but with a lot more athletic ability, and that's saying a lot too. Very dense moveset. But anyway, having Apollo Crews win the Battle Royal was a great sign of the New Era moniker. I mean, I'm really enjoying the fact that WWE is keeping consistent with their new saying. And then talk about another surprise after another. The Miz ends up doing a moniker with himself on Miz TV, and he's doing great heel stuff. The Miz is doing great heel work as far as being an Intercontinental Champion, and with Maurice by his side, it looks great. So Miz is doing Miz TV, and then he's doing a promo with himself where he's actually interviewing himself and talking to Maurice too. But then Randy Orton comes out, his song hits, he comes out, cuts a promo against the Miz, and is like, Randy Orton was like, you know what, let me just face you right now. I think Buffalo would like to see that. And then a dispute comes between the Miz, Randy, and his wife, and his wife comes and says, you know what, he'll take the battle. So what ends up happening is that Randy Orton versus the Miz in a non-title match happens right then and there. Of course, it's always predetermined, but I mean, you just feel immersed in the fact that, what, it may have happened organically. It was cool to see. Randy Orton looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Of course, this match wasn't going to be anything detrimental to Randy. It wasn't going to be that serious. So what ended up happening is that The Miz takes two RKOs. No huff, no stuff. I mean, it's just The Miz had to take an L. Just to make Randy Orton look a little strong going into SummerSlam. They're going to do the same thing for Brock Lesnar come Monday Night Raw when he debuts. But seeing Randy Orton come back in the mix and seeing them actually debuting the Gentleman after 9 months in Buffalo on SmackDown Live was actually great to see, because a lot of returns don't happen till a major pay-per-view comes, and I really don't think that's necessary, but, to think about timetables, like with injuries, maybe it's appropriate, but, I was just glad to see Randy Orton actually show up then and there. Anyway, after this, I think in the middle of some of this, you had a match between Becky Lynch and Natalya, but that was pretty much it. I didn't really appreciate it myself, just because it was pretty sloppy, but anyway. Then after, so what looks like a jobber is actually going to have a squash match with somebody. Heath Slater interrupts him and actually cuts a promo saying that, he should be the guy that's going to, he's still unsigned from any draft. He hasn't been picked. So then he actually pleads to Shane McMahon to actually get signed. And then all of a sudden Rhino comes out of the corner of the opposite side of the entranceway, spears Heath Slater, and I hope this just doesn't bury Heath Slater as just a comedic talent. I mean, I think he's great on the mic, but who knows? I just have the highest hopes for the Gentleman, just because his gimmick. They're not going to let some guy just cross over between Raw and SmackDown without any lead to him. I don't think that the WWE is going to be not wise in that regard. But anyway, let's go to the main event. We had AJ Styles, John Cena, Apollo Crews, Baron Corbin, Bray Wyatt, and Dolph Ziggler. They're all in this 6-pack challenge. It's it's just all, everyone's in the mix, everyone's fighting. And leading off to the end of this is that AJ Styles throws a phenomenal forearm to John Cena. And then AJ Styles ends up tossing, with the forearm. Cena rolls out. AJ Styles turns around and gets a super kick by none other than Dolph Ziggler. And Dolph Ziggler actually gets this title match at SummerSlam against Dean Ambrose. This is something very incredible to see. I think it's something enjoyable. To get, everyone that's been teasing for Dolph Ziggler to have a championship match at SummerSlam. I think it's going to be something to appreciate, but as far as predicting, I'm not going to do that till, a couple days before SummerSlam to look at the card and take a very good look at what WWE might do on that one. But anyway, I want to let you guys know is that one great thing to take away from both Raw and SmackDown is that they're very serious about this new era stuff. Please take it as a ton of validity as you can, because it definitely is valid. Like, it is so serious for these guys right now. They're definitely going to be pushing younger stars. They're going to be putting main eventers where they need to be. They'll get everything adjusted appropriately to where you'll see actual not favoritism, but I'm saying like the right guys for the right job will be there at the right time. That's the thing to take away from tonight, tonight and the previous night before with Raw and SmackDown. Other than that, I want to let you guys know is that this pay-per-view wrestling podcast was brought to you by none other than Game Swappers. Game Swappers. Buy, sell, and trade your retro games and next-gen consoles. That's PS4 and Xbox One. You can come into contact with Game Swappers via Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers. Buy, sell, and trade. Keep in mind, guys, that if you do share the pay-per-view wrestling podcast, the Retro Collecting 101 podcast, where I show you how to amass a great retro collection, or the very entertaining Mark and Andre podcast show, the only film, entertainment, and conspiracy show podcast on Spreaker.com, you'll be able to get 10% off towards your retro game purchases Or if you're not in the interest of buying retro games and want to sell some, you'll be able to get 10% more towards your retro game trade-ins. Simply take a screenshot, share your post to any employee working at Game Swappers, and then you'll be able to get the savings there. Anyway, guys, I want to wish you guys a good night. I'm very excited for where the direction wrestling's going now. Hopefully you are too. If you guys have any opinions, comments, concerns, please feel free to contact me at markandandrepodcast@gmail.com, all one word. markandandrepodcast@gmail.com. Let's talk wrestling. Add me on Facebook, at Instagram at Mark F's Modern Life. That's MarksFModernlife. Thank you guys. You guys have a good night.